true. So today is Thanksgiving, and it just always brings up some like a like a lesson the Lord has taught me over the years about gratitude and whatnot. And because I hear, people like I'm not a holiday person, really not a holiday person. But I hear people like talking about being thankful, like take this time to be thankful and what are you grateful for and counting your blessings. And yes, I'm not saying the Bible doesn't say it's all over the place. Give thanks, and enter his gates with thanksgiving in your heart and his courts with praise. There's so many things like where it talks about being grateful, right? But sometimes our kind of grateful, I don't think is quite right, because like if what we're doing is changing our perspective on things and we're taking control of our thoughts to bring them into alignment with what gratitude's supposed to look like, how we're supposed to be thankful and that kind of thing, and how we should feel about things, that kind of thing. That's actually more in line with a lot of the Eastern religion beliefs about kind of how we control things and we shape our own destiny and our own um, reality by our thoughts and our mind and controlling those things, right? That's very in line with those things. I'm very familiar with those things because I do a lot of qigong and stuff like that, and so I hear a lot of the teachings, right? But but when I'm when I'm feeling not grateful, but I feel like I should feel grateful. That's the words that the words that always come to mind with it are C.S. Lewis. I love the way that C.S. Lewis put it, and he said, "Don't pray what ought to be in you. Pray what's in you." You know, and I think that sometimes we try to skip grief and go straight to gratitude. And what happens is when you skip grief in your life, when you don't go through the grieving process of stuff and how you have like the deep hurts and the wounds, and not like the I feel sad, what do I do about it, but when you're like I feel sad, there's nothing to be done about it and the only thing to do is bring it to the Lord, like that kind of grief where you are powerless, like the kind of grief that when you look at like how broken and messed up the whole world is, it hits you that it's never getting better. And this is, we have to live here anyway, and we have to go through this hardship that hits you when you realize that being the life of a Christian doesn't mean that you get a free pass on like pain and suffering. Actually, it kind of guarantees that you're supposed to have it. And there's all these things that like that when you realize like how powerless you are, there's a kind of grief that hits that a lot of times we rather try to find a way to manage it ourselves, like something to make us feel better. And sometimes that can be like focusing on gratitude and positive thinking, right? And finding the silver lining, those kind of things. And I'm not saying that we should just revel in grief and we should, but we should grieve when it's time to grieve, right? And because so here's the thing is when we suppress our grief, eventually it creates grumbling because we haven't grieved, and the discontentment, the unhappiness, we've put it under some layers of stuff, right? But like it's still there and it hasn't gone away. And but when we grieve and we go through those seasons of hardship and grief, that and we walk through them with the Lord, when we receive the consolation of the Holy Spirit, when the Holy Spirit lifts us up, as I think it's in James where it talks about like humble yourselves, turn your laughing into mourning, your weeping, like humble yourselves on the mighty hand of God, and in due time he will lift you up, right? The change that he makes when we go through the grieving process is so much different. That gratitude is so different, and it can be over. Like I've been through those things. I've had a lot of grief in my life, and there's like sometimes the littlest things can be just like amazing, like because of the amount of grief. It's sometimes like what, like you can't appreciate the light until you sat in the darkness for a while, that kind of thing. But I think that sometimes um, because we feel like we should be more grateful and we should be this and we should be that, and we can act our way into it and we can reframe our thinking and we can be grateful and we can have this positive attitude and outlook on life and all that stuff. But it's not. It's kind of like I feel like when I've done that, because I'm not saying like I've never done that. I've done that many times where I take control of it and I'm going to do this and be grateful and, have the attitude of gratitude and blah, blah, blah. And, all these little exercises, mental health things and, And then I just felt like the Holy Spirit spoke to me at one point when I was doing all that, and I was putting so much effort into like being grateful for in the midst of things and not focusing on the dark things and all that, and not allowing myself to really fully go through the grieving. And I felt like the Holy Spirit said, you've received your reward in full. Just like he said to the Pharisees, who you like to stand on street corners with your phylacteries and your tassels, and you like to make sure everybody knows how, you've received your reward in full. And because you are doing this for your own reasons, to receive something from it, to feel better, to feel grateful, to feel like I'm a good Christian because I have an attitude of gratitude, right? Whatever it is. And I'm not saying everybody who's doing that is like that. It's really a between you and the Holy Spirit kind of thing. But it's something that sometimes for me was happening and I didn't realize it because I just assumed. Well, anyway, but I really like the other quote. These are two people, like as far as like when it comes to like, I'm not a big fan of like reading a whole bunch of stuff or whatever, but C.S. Lewis and Oswald Chambers, they're my jam. Like their stuff is so jive with how I believe. Not like I'm basing what I believe on them, but so often I come to similar conclusions, and then I hear something from them, and I'm like, that's how I would say it. Like they're really good at finding words for things, and or putting to words the concepts that I struggle with sometimes. But I don't know if I can remember it exactly, but one of the quotes of Oswald Chambers I really liked was he said, when you're joyful, be joyful. When you're sad, be sad. If God has given you a bitter cup, don't try and make it sweet. And if he's given you a sweet cup, don't try and make it bitter. Just take things as they come. And I think that is so big for us, because especially like with these times of year that like today is a day for gratitude, right? You can't control what's going on today, and you can't control any of that stuff. And sometimes these days, this is one of the things I don't like holidays, because they just become, for me, they've become many times landmarks for sad things. Like, because I wouldn't remember when that thing happened except for that it was on a holiday. And so then it just triggers all these old sad memories, right? I just don't like holidays. Not my jam. Yeah. Anyways, that's one of the things, like I've always said, like, I don't jive with all of the beliefs of the Jehovah's Witnesses, but I do like that they don't celebrate the holidays. And there's some times that I'm like, I wish I could get that part of it. Anyway, and like, just because when so many people are all about the holidays, it's really hard when you're somebody who just doesn't feel like right about celebrating them. Like, I don't think that it's necessarily a good thing. Anyway, can't change that. I will grieve about that later. But so I guess I was just saying that because I know sometimes during the holidays and stuff, there's such pressure to feel like grateful and gratitude and put on this display of this, that, or the other thing. And sometimes I think it's more important to just, if you're sad, be sad. If you are ungrateful, be ungrateful. If you are angry, be angry. And like, but at the same time, take that to the Lord, because we can do all these things to feel grateful again and achieve, you received your reward in full, or we can take all that ugliness and that grief and that anger and all of those things to the Lord. And I mean, boldly go before the Lord and be like, what is up with this? You said this, you said that, you promised me this, what is going on? And we're so scared to talk to the Lord. Like we get silly about that. Like, we need to be polite to God. Like, he doesn't already know all the filthy thoughts in our hearts, and he knows all of them. He knows all the things that we pop up and we immediately go, don't think that, that's not appropriate. He knows all of them, but sometimes we don't, because we shut them up real quick. And so we don't let those things out, and we don't let the Lord deal with us on them. And the Lord sometimes is waiting for us to do that so he can show us ourselves. Because let me tell you, I have gone before the Lord in anger and like frustration and just dumped my heart. And there's a way that he reflects it back at me so that I can see it differently. And it shows me things, and it's humbling about myself, and it helps me understand who he is more. And it is biblical. I mean, some people but some people kind of feel like, especially in the church, I feel it's very oppressively like, we have this idea of how we're supposed to pray because we hear people pray, but I don't like the praying in a group out loud. I feel like it, because I feel like we're too aware of that other humans are listening, and so it just changes the kind of things we say. And but it changes for me because then I go home and then I'm thinking and I'm praying that same polite prayer and I'm like, why am I even saying that? Like some of the words that I'm used to saying, I'm like, I don't even know what that really means. I've just been hearing it in church my whole life. But like when I pray the ugly prayers, like the ones where I'm angry, I'm upset, I sometimes swear, I'm like, I am bearing my soul to God. That's when he responds to me because that's when I'm being genuine. That's how I'm really deep gut feelings are right now. And it's out there so he can deal with me on it. And then when he lifts me up, then there's real gratitude and it's miraculous gratitude. It's different than the gratitude that I can cultivate in myself. And I'm not saying there's no place for cultivating gratitude in ourselves. There is. We take every thought captive to make it obedient to Christ. But if we are skipping the grief step, if we are skipping the letting our real feelings come to the surface, and if we're being polite with God, then we're missing out on the blessing. We're missing the gift, right? And I just think it's really important to, and I was to say it is biblical. If you ever, like, because people will be really polite about stuff and they'll be like, I don't know if that's appropriate to say that to God and all that. Read the Psalms. Read how David prayed because he did not pull his punches. He was like, why are you doing this to me? Why are these people grab their babies and smash them against rocks, break all their teeth? Like he was not polite in his prayers. And you can even see it as through the progression of someone where he starts out really passionate and you can tell he's upset and he's, almost bitter and like, where are you, God? And all of the, and then he's starting to receive the consolation of the Holy Spirit. And then by the end of it, he's saying, blessed be the Lord and thank you, because he allowed all of that stuff out. Because what we do is we go, it shouldn't be there. We don't, that's not how a Christian should be. That's not what should be in our life. And so we're trying to go outside in instead of letting it inside out, right? And so what happens is we shove that stuff down deeper. And so it's like, okay, it's not on the surface anymore. We're okay. I don't see it anymore, right? But it's still there. And then it festers. And then it becomes like things that you don't even know is in your own heart. But then there's a metaphor. I can't remember. It's one of those famous preacher guys. I know I read it somewhere, like the purpose driven life guy wrote something else. But anyways, he was talking about like how your heart is like a cup, kind of like, and so when it gets jostled, whatever it spills out is what's in the cup. Like if you've got a cup of water, it's not going to spill coffee, it's not going to spill juice, it's going to spill water. And like, so when we get jostled by life, then stuff comes out of our heart and a lot of it is stuff that we didn't grieve properly, that we didn't let out to the Lord, that we didn't vent out like our frustration, anger in a right way. Sometimes we try and fix it ourselves. Sometimes we're trying to fix the people around us. And sometimes we're trying to, like do all those things, but we don't like go to the Lord and say, wait a minute, why did you do this to me? Because we'll be like, well, it's the consequences of my own actions and all of these things. And I'm not saying we don't, like, that's not the case in some way, but at the same time, the Lord is really the one that if I'm trying to follow the Lord and I make mistakes, like there's some accountability there that I feel like I have every right to go, Lord, why did you let me do that? Like, why didn't you show me? And maybe I need to get mad and say, look, why didn't you show me? And then he'll give me this moment and go, I did tell you. And then I have this realization of what I did like wrong in a different way. But it's like, it's again, it's bringing it to the Lord because there's things when we are grieving, when we are in pain, there's something that's trying to be communicated to us. And if we keep trying to manage the pain, like it's like medically, right? When you have pain, there's a source and there's a reason and there's clues in that. And this is something that is very close to home for me because I live with this all the time. And I'm always trying to understand, okay, wait, what is this pain and what is it trying to show me? Like, should I be doing this differently? Should I push through this much pain? And but like when you go to medical facilities, a lot of times they're like, we just want to get rid of the pain. We can do this treatment. We can give you this medication. We can do these things and you can try, and it's like, but then you're not getting the communication that your body's trying to give you. And I feel like we do that some with our grief and stuff. We use the gratitude and all of these like things as kind of like treatment plans for to manage these deeper feelings of grief. And sometimes it's fear that we need to vent out because that does not belong in our hearts. But a lot of us have a heart full of it. And but until we bring that to the Lord and he shows us that it's fear, we can't really receive the faith that we need to combat the fear, because that's the flip side. It's either fear or faith. It's not both, right? And but anyway, I just feel like sometimes this day is a day that we get that we can get caught up in the doing what we ought to do and miss the receiving what the Lord wants to bring into it, you know? And I'm not saying like, at your Thanksgiving dinner, everybody start grieving. I'm just saying like, sometimes it feels like a yucky feeling like, oh, I'm not really grateful, but I should be, And all that does is make me feel guilty now. I feel guilty about not feeling grateful because I should feel grateful. If I look at what those people have and I look at this, then I know that I'm better off than that and I don't have it that bad and all those kind of things. But that's not gratitude, that's guilt. And that doesn't produce anything beneficial in our lives. But anyway, I've already said too much because, yeah, I'm going all over the place. So I'll stop now.